Your Sony A6700 has just arrived, and it's time to go ahead and set it up just for you. So we're gonna go ahead and take a look at the goodies inside the menus and be able to set this up for photography and video. This video is meant to be a follow along guide, but if you want at the very end, you can go ahead and download a link to my settings that you can load onto your camera in case you need a backup. But here we go. So let's go ahead into the menu and let's forget about this main menu here and go straight into our first page. All right, first let's get a little oriented here because we got this what we call a main menu here, right? This is the title of the settings, and over here is the main part or the section that we are looking at. Meanwhile, on the side we have tabs as well that focus on the different parts of the settings, right? We have the setup here, network, playback, focus, exposure, color, shooting, and the main menu, as well as the custom or my menu. Let's go ahead and ignore this first section for now, as maybe later we'll go ahead and add things to it once we familiarize ourselves with what's actually going on in this camera. All right, so we'll move down to the shooting tab and we'll go ahead over, and instead of going one by one to this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, we can actually go over here to the side. And as we move down the menu, we can also go into the other parts of the shooting tab. Okay, first things first, I often just shoot JPEG, and that allows me to go ahead and preview everything on my Mac, and yeah, it's good enough for me. This HEIF, or HEIF, I don't know how you want to pronounce it. This is supposed to be a more compressed version of JPEG, but for me, JPEG is totally fine. It's what's been working for me, and I don't want to change it. File format though, that is something that I want to change because we want to not just shoot RAW, but also RAW and JPEG. Most people prefer RAW, which is just going to give them the most data when it comes to being able to edit their photos in something like Lightroom. But in this case, especially when we're using a Sony A6700, which only has one SD card slot, we want to be able to have our RAWs for editing later, as well as our JPEGs in case we need to go ahead and send photos right away, and to even have it as backup, just in case for some reason something gets corrupted. Okay, so we'll leave it at that. For RAW file type, we have lossless comp and compressed. This will be the more file size friendly option, whereas compressed is the full-on sized. But we're gonna go ahead and try out lossless compression and see how that does. Most people that I've already watched videos from, they've already said that you can't really notice the difference in the compression type. Moving down, JPEG quality, fine is good enough for me. The quality of the JPEG image is going to be really fine enough for me, but of course if you are dependent on JPEGs, then you can go ahead and use extra fine, or if you want, even go standard. If you don't, fine is what I've been using, and fine is what I'm gonna stick to. JPEG image, again, you can also lower the megapixel count here, or even the file size ultimately of your JPEGs, and I'm just gonna go ahead and keep it at large at 26 megapixels. Aspect ratio, 3:2, it's going to be the biggest size photo that I can get, and if anything, you can go ahead and change this later on in post if you need different crop ratios. File format, we're already digging into video settings here. For me, my preference is to shoot XAVC-HS in 4K. This will be the lowest file consuming 4K that these cameras can offer, as well as the other Sony cameras. And then once you move up, you can also use the S for 4K and then the SI for 4K. But for me, to achieve the balance of having a decent file size and also having good image quality, I've been using HS on all my cameras. Unless, of course, I'm anticipating a long video recording of a ceremony or a seminar or something like that. But most often I just stick to HS 4K. Moving down, movie settings, we can just go ahead and take a peek at this. Frame rate, I'm gonna stick to 24 frames per second. Keep that cinematic. For those of you who are in other regions of the world who don't have 24, 60, or 120 frames per second, you can change this later on in the setup tab. Changes from NTSC to PAL. I get that question very often. So go ahead and stick it to 24 for now, or 25 if you're in that region. And if you need to, go ahead and change that up in the setup tab if you want that 24, 60, or 120 frames. And then for recording setting, we want to keep it at 10-bit. Again, that balance of file consumption and image quality. And I've been getting fair enough quality just by getting the 30 megabytes here, 420, 10-bit. Of course, if you want a little more room, you can go ahead and max it at 100 megabits, 422, 10-bit. Again, it depends on what you're at. If you're someone like me who's shooting casually with this camera and sometimes using it as like a B or C camera, maybe you want to bump it up to 50. And if you really need it, 100. Going down, long exposure, noise reduction. Yeah, I tried to do most of my noise reduction in post, so I'm just gonna shut that off. Again, high ISO, noise reduction, off. But if you're less about editing, you can go ahead and turn those on and see how you feel about that. I personally don't have any experience with that, as I, again, try to do most of everything in post. Okay, going down. Color space, we'll keep it as sRGB. For those of you who really want to dictate their color spaces, you can go in here. But for me, sRGB is totally fine. For lens compensation, this is like trying to go ahead and automatically do things in the camera to compensate for any distortions, chromatic aberrations, shadings, just some defects that you may find with the lens. And I'm just going to leave this off for now until I find a particular lens that's giving me issues. But other than that, we got leaving it on auto, and then distortion, leaving it off. You can also control this in post, like in Lightroom, if you want to fix the distortion and also tamper with how much distortion vignetting you're getting. Oh, all right. We're making it to the end of this tab. Going down, see, now we just highlighted number 2. It's talking about media. Everything's grayed out. We don't have any card in here right now, so, but we're okay. We're good. Going down, we have file and folder settings. This is where we can go ahead and choose how we want to go ahead and name our files, things of that nature. So right now I'm going to go to file number and I want it as series, right? You don't want to reset that as much as possible. Set file name. I like to set mine to my initials. We'll go over here. Let's see if I can actually put A6700. Nope, that's it. You only get three letters. Yep, that hasn't changed. Yep. All right, so for the folder name, standard form, I like to keep it as date form. It just helps me when I go ahead and label this and organize it later on the computer. Going back. Yeah, normally I don't write any copyright info or anything of that nature. You could set a copyright info. This will help if you're gonna go ahead and print digitals. And if you go to a certain shop, it'll ask, oh, this image is copyrighted. You don't have the rights to do this or that. Yeah, I have no issues. I'm good. But if you want, you can go in here and write all your info. So you can set that to on, set the photographer name, and all that good stuff. Moving on in the shooting menu, option number 4, we have auto scene selection. Oh, yep. I'm using manual mode, by the way, so this option is grayed out. Over here, we can set our camera settings so that we can easily switch between different settings. So if I want to have certain settings for indoors or outdoors, I can go ahead and flip the switches here on the side and set them. So if I go here to camera setup memory or shooting memory, I can go ahead and program whatever my current settings are and place it in one of these 3. I don't really have anything right now. Yeah, let's program one. So let's go ahead and hit menu to close it. And typically I'm going to shoot, let's say in an indoor setting, and let's say I use 1/250th of a second. ISO, I'm gonna keep at auto, and the f-stop, I don't have a lens on this right now. But I like it where it's at. I'm shooting auto white balance. I'm gonna go ahead and use single shooting. I am mostly shooting human subjects. My focus area is usually shot at wide. Well, that's the way I prefer to shoot. Ooh, you can do creative looks for photos. That's something we gotta dial in, but that'll be for another video. Yeah, I'm just gonna keep this at standard for now. All right, so I'm satisfied with these photo settings. I'm gonna go ahead back to menu. I'm gonna go ahead to camera set memory, and I'm gonna save it to number 1 for our indoor settings. Alrighty, and that's registered. Now I'm gonna go outside the menu and go ahead and program some settings for outdoor shooting. And normally that would probably at least be around 1600th of a second. And ISO again, we'll leave at auto. And f-stop, we don't have a lens on here, but typically I leave it around the lowest, if not f4 or 5.6, especially outdoors. So again, we're gonna go ahead, menu, and set that over to number 2. Okay, so later on we should be able to go ahead and use this recall camera setting function. And later on at the top of the camera here, we can go ahead and set it to 1, 2, or 3, which is what we just set this to, and we can go ahead and use these settings that we already programmed. And we can also do the same for video. We'll move on to that section a little bit later. Let's just go through the menu first, and then we'll dial in more custom stuff towards the end. Okay, registered custom shoot set. This refers to like being able to recall settings at the press of a button, but right now I'm not really about that. So I'm just gonna leave that alone. Going down, we're already at option number 5. Drive mode is at single shooting. This could also be operated from the main screen here, from this option right there. I like to keep it as single shooting unless I'm shooting sports. Bracket settings, this is also a little more specialized if you're used to shooting HDR content, being able to shoot the highlights, the well exposed or the medium exposed shot, and the dark parts of the image to mash them all up together to be able to put together a high dynamic range photo. But we're not gonna go ahead and do anything like that. But this is how I would normally do it at -0, and +0. But if anything, I already like where it's at already. 0, which is the evenly shot or evenly exposed image. Then it's gonna shoot the negative image or the underexposed image, and then the plus, which is the overexposed image. Focus bracket setting, shooting interval, the shortest. So you just want it to be like a burst shot. So 1, 2, 3. Shooting interval, I usually like to keep it as the shortest, but that's good that it gives you that option. And we're gonna go ahead and leave that by itself, current folder. Actually, you know what? Let's leave the bracketed folders somewhere else. So this actually makes it easier for us in organization later. So we're gonna put that in a different folder. Going back, interval shooting, this is a time-lapse, built-in time-lapse feature in all the Sony cameras. For me, we can go ahead and dial in what I typically like to have. Usually I like to go ahead and start at 1 second here, the shooting time. Like as soon as I press the shutter button, when this thing is turned on, this shooting time refers to how long will it take for this thing to start. Say I want to be in the time lapse, right? But I don't want to be cut in the middle, like shoot, hit the button to start, and then I'm walking to the spot that I want the time lapse to begin at. So I want to say, give myself like 5 seconds. So I'll hit the shutter button, right? And in 5 seconds, then the time lapse will start. But if you're like doing landscapes or you're the one behind the camera, then doing it at 1 second is just fine. It'll just start right away. Shooting interval, how many times the photos are gonna be taken. I usually like, 3 seconds is fine. Number of shots. Do note that when you're go ahead and manipulating these numbers, let's say you want 50 shots, especially depending on how much photos that you actually want at the end to put together and edit together. You'll also notice that here at the bottom, it'll note how much time it'll take to shoot all those photos. So at a 3 second interval, 2 minutes, 27 seconds, that's good enough for me. Okay, the tracking sensitivity, medium, going down, shutter type, electronic, I like it at mechanical. All right, and then there's that. That's all we can do for now, especially when I'm shooting in manual, this shooting interval priority thing. So we'll leave that alone. Going back, again, let's actually shut that off. Oops, I forgot to shut that off. I don't want that to start later on. Whew, all right, we're getting there. We're getting there. We're getting there. Number 6, silent shooting modes. I'm just gonna keep this off and we'll keep that at mechanical shutter for now. E front curtain, I also want that on. Release without the lens, keep that on. This is especially important when you're using manual lenses that don't electronically communicate with the pins inside of the camera. So if you plan on using like a vintage lens, you wanna be able to keep this on. Release without the card. You can at least keep one photo in the camera when you hold down the shutter. But other than that, unless you're directly using like a tether cable to your computer, it would be beneficial for you to actually have an SD card in here. But there are ways to save photos without using an SD card, and that would be the way to do it. Anti-flicker setting, we can go ahead and leave this off. I don't have any experience with flickering lights. Well, I do, but it's not so much that I have to go in here and play with these settings. This will usually refer to like screens or light bulbs, things of that nature. But usually I try to go around it by using shutter speed, if I can. Going down, steady shot, I want that to be on. This is the IBIS, or the in-body image stabilization that it is referring to. I want to keep that on, so I can handheld most of my photos and videos and the image will still turn out great. And then it'll also adjust for things manually. Again, if you're using vintage lenses or manual lenses at that, that don't communicate as well as like the Sony cameras or the other E-mount camera lenses. So like right here, focal length. Let's say I'm going to be using a 16mm. So then the IBIS or the steady shot or the image stabilization will compensate for all the movement when I program this in there. But right now, no lens. Going down. All right, we're getting closer to the end of the shooting menu. 8, zoom. Yeah, zoom is not something that you actually want to use unless you are optically zooming. You have a zoom lens. So like right here, optical zoom only. I don't recommend anybody do any kind of digital zoom, maybe clear image zoom, but clear image zoom is something that it's a form of digital zoom with Sony if you don't already know. That actually has a better quality than the digital zoom. It's kind of hard to explain, you just have to, you'll know when you see it. Custom Z speed, zoom speed. We'll just keep everything here as default. This is not a big deal for me. Remote. This is especially true if you have a Bluetooth remote, but again, keep everything the same. And going down, grid lines. This is a big one for me. I'm gonna turn that on, and I like to go by the rule of thirds. I also have it on my phone. I don't know about you. Let me know in the comments if you also use grid lines. I just stick to the rule of thirds, but other people can use the grid or diagonals. Perhaps that'll be good for like symmetry. Rule of thirds is good enough for me, less on the screen, and just enough. And live view display, you want the setting effect to be on. You want the exposure setting, something that we actually can preview. We want that to be set to this, exposure set and flash as well. Frame rate, low limit, what is that? Yeah, I'm just gonna leave that off. I like the way my camera works already. All right, and here we go. Exposure menu. All right, we're making progress. Bulb timer settings. This is important if you're gonna do long exposures, like if you're gonna go ahead and shoot the stars or go ahead and do a long exposure at a waterfall. Usually the longest that a camera will go ahead and keep the sensor open, or as if we were shooting DSLRs, the longest that a camera will go ahead and hold the shutter is 30 seconds. But if you use bulb, it just pretty much turns off when you let go of the shutter or if you let go of your remote trigger. So for here, I guess we can go a little bit longer because it says you can go up to even 60 seconds, which is like crazy. You're really shooting out stars, right? But we're gonna go ahead and turn it off. But if we turn it on, of course, it'll go ahead and do that long exposure. And wow, this thing gives options. This will be something to definitely try when you're going out to shoot in the night. Do those long exposures of stars, planets, whatever you got, whatever setup you got. But for now, that'll be a video for another day. So we'll turn that off. Going down, auto ISO. So right now that's what I have it set to, but typically I like to just go ahead and just let it be. But if there are certain ISOs or ISOs that you prefer to go ahead and shoot at or keep it under, like me, I like to probably keep it 6400, maybe 8000 the most. Yeah, we'll keep it like that. Of course, if you're already shooting auto, you don't need to worry about this, like the auto tab in general, but because I'm shooting manual, that's what I'm going to go ahead and keep it at. ISO auto minimum with the shutter, yeah, we'll leave that alone. Exposure compensation, we're gonna go ahead and leave this at 0. Depending on certain locations, sometimes I will underexpose a little bit, so I'll like go ahead and bring it under 0.07, knowing that I will later on go ahead and bring it up in post. Usually this is like if I'm shooting outdoors and sometimes indoors, depending on how the lighting situation is. But for now, we'll leave it at 0. Exposure step, how much tweaks in between each exposure value. 0.3 is enough, a little fine, but it's fine enough for me. Exposure standard adjust, we'll just leave that alone. Metering mode, multi, this pretty much measures the entire frame and gets a basic reading of how much exposure that we're actually getting. So right now when I look at this camera right here, it's +1. But if I was wearing a dark shirt, probably it'd be sitting at 0 or 0.3. This is how I normally go ahead and expose for most of my photos and videos, and I'm gonna keep it just like that. Face priority in multimetering, this is to make sure, like if I'm shooting portraits, that the face is evenly exposed and it's not too bright nor too dark. We're gonna leave that on. Spot metering, we can also leave that in the center. AEL with shutter, I try to lock in my focus. This is the auto exposure lock. Typically I will use this with the back button, so like the AF on button is what I plan to move it to later. So we'll actually turn this off. But if you're someone who likes to half press on the shutter, then you can leave it on. Okay, going down, flash mode. I'm not really using flash, so I'll leave most of this alone right here. And if you are gonna use flash or wireless flash, then turn that part on. Red eye reduction, maybe this is something you wanna change in post. Or if you don't shoot that often, then you can turn it on. External flash, all this extra stuff. I don't really touch it. Going down, white balance. When it comes to photos, I just leave it on, especially when I'm editing in RAW, so I can go ahead and change the white balance anyway if I don't find that it suits. But when it comes to video, that's when I do it manually. But of course, we'll do that in a manual setting later on. Priority set and auto white balance. See, we can go ahead and set these things here. Priority set an auto white balance. So pretty much just a standard look, or if you want things like a warmer look, you can go for the ambience or white and prioritize the things that are actually white. This is not actually white. This is more like a light tan. But for me, I actually prefer things be white. So I'm gonna go ahead and set the priority white balance to white. Shutter auto white balance lock. Man, I didn't realize this was that much of an issue. Yeah, let's we'll leave this off. I've never used the shutter auto white balance lock before, but I don't plan to use it now. So we'll move on. If any changes, leave in the comments. Let me know if you try it out and if it worked out better for you. Feel free to share. All right, so for the D range optimizer, it pretty much acts as like a processor to go ahead and boost your shadows without even have to go too much into post, especially if you're going to go ahead and shoot JPEG. But for me, since I do a lot of my post-processing anyway, even if I put on a preset or whatever, I just want things to be consistent. So for that reason, I'm gonna go ahead and leave this off. For creative look, we'll keep it as standard, but you can go ahead and pick the different kinds of settings here and like play around with what your JPEGs will look like, or even your RAWs will look like when you shoot. But I'm gonna go ahead and leave these alone for now. I feel like this has its own dedicated video, and maybe that we can delve into that a little thoroughly in that. But for now, we'll keep it as standard and just have things all off here. But if we go here and take a look and see what kind of settings we can play with, we got contrast, highlight, shadows, fade, saturation, and so forth. If anything, I don't want to add too much stuff here, so I'm just gonna go ahead and bring this down to 0. Okay, 1, I get 1. Picture profile, so this is where I can shoot things like S-Log2 or S-Log3. Okay, we got Cine here, Cine 2, HLG, S-Cinetone. Oh, that's great. Yeah, I'm just gonna go ahead and leave that off. This is just mainly for photos. Soft skin effect, again, we're gonna go ahead and leave that off because any post-processing should be done there for things like soft skin. All right, we're getting closer. Zebra display. I'm gonna leave this off. This is again something that I use more for video, and you can go ahead and dial that in up to whatever we need it to be. So we're gonna leave that off, not doing video. Going down, we're on to the next tab, the 4th tab. We got AF, MF tab, which is autofocus, manual focus. All right, so here, priority set. I like to keep it as balanced emphasis for autofocus single points. All right, we're gonna stick to balanced emphasis. I was using this on my other cameras and it's just the way that I work. All right, same thing here with priority set and AF continuous. AF tracking sensitivity. For photos, you know, we could let it be 4, you know, just to have a good idea of being able to lock onto your target and also not get too distracted from your subject that you want, especially when they're moving. AF illuminator. We're gonna go ahead and set that to off. This is so that when you're shooting in the dark, especially, there's gonna be a flashlight, like a little beam of light that'll shoot at your subject so that you can capture focus. Because if it's too dark, sometimes your camera cannot pick up their face, even if their AI is pretty good. It'll probably catch it anyway. Anyway, moving down, aperture drive. Man, Sony's just coming up with all these new options in these cameras that you weren't even thinking about, or at least most of us don't even use. Pretty much aperture drive and autofocus, it's just supposed to prioritize whether or not you want to be quiet, if you want to be in a ceremony, you want to be less noticeable. But for me, I'm just going to keep it as standard. Maybe some other time I'll try out silent. Maybe I'll report back to you and see how that goes. But for now, I'll just keep it as standard. AF with shutter, trying not to do that. Gonna go ahead and focus with the back button here. Okay, off. But again, if that's the way that you like to work, then you can go ahead and leave that on and just half press the shutter and press down all the way to take your photo. Full-time DMF. I actually want to use this, put this on. What DMF does is pretty much when I'm going to go ahead and point the camera at a subject and realize like, oh, that's not the subject that I want to focus on, I'm just going to adjust the focus ring. It'll adjust the focus as I'm adjusting it manually and stick to that subject that I want while using autofocus. Hopefully that made sense. So pretty much, I'm using autofocus, and it's not the subject that I want. I use the manual ring to change the focus, and it sticks to the subject that I actually want. Pre-AF. That works with the lens. We don't have one attached, so we'll just leave that off for now. Focus area, to keep that wide. You can also find this option here on the main screen here. And again, like I said, I like to keep it wide. For zone, it's going to be good if you're doing a pretty much predictable setup with like a subject on one side of the frame or the other side. This is particularly good for video if you have a certain subject or talent on one side and you just want the focus to be on that side of the frame. Center fix, of course, straight down the middle, like this kind of setup, but I also have this set up to wide. So again, keep it at wide. Spot, you can go ahead and choose a certain spot of the frame at the varying different sizes when you press to focus or touch the focus. And then the expand spot, again, similar to what the spot was, but you have a little bit more range. So almost like a spot and zone combined. And then tracking, which of course you hit and tap for your subject and it'll track you, but it should already track you already just by clicking on the screen, especially if it catches your face. All right, we're just gonna leave it at wide. Switch vertical and horizontal AF area. Yeah, I'm just gonna leave this off. Switching the vertical and horizontal AF area, that's gonna be big if you like to take different shots and recompose your shots, and you wanna choose, I guess, 2 sets of focus areas. So like if I wanna do rule of thirds and do the top right corner of the vertical, I wanna go ahead and take that shot when I only take verticals, or when I'm gonna go ahead and take horizontal photos, I also want the top right, but it's gonna be in that particular spot. It's just gonna be different when I shift it, right? So if anything, I'm just gonna go ahead and choose AF point and AF area. Focus color, which is pretty much the color of the box that's going to be tracking your subjects before you focus on them. This is going to be that AI or that autofocus feature that they already have in this camera. I like to keep mine on white. AF area registration, you can go ahead and register certain areas, or it would be faces that you would register so that it would always pick that area to go ahead and focus on. I'm just gonna leave that off. This is good if you're gonna go ahead and shoot a wedding and you mainly want the groom and bride to be focused on if people walk across the frame. But if anything, I will go ahead and move things to manual if I wanna keep certain subjects in focus, even if subjects cross my frame. AF auto clear. AF auto clear, I just wanna go ahead and leave this off because I wanna keep the autofocus on the subjects and in the area that I want them to be even after I take the photo. Setting it on will ruin and clear my autofocus after I've taken the photo. Going down, area display during tracking. We're gonna leave this off. I really like the way that my camera functions without it on. Autofocus continuous area display. This is good because as your subject is moving, you also wanna know if the hit points are also following your subjects. Phase detect. This will be good if I have my lens on. I would definitely like to have that on. For circulation of focus points, we're just gonna keep it off. Autofocus frame movement amount, we're gonna keep it standard, nothing crazy. Subject recognition and autofocus, yep, we want that on. Recognition target, human, that's what I shoot, but of course you can go ahead and choose these different subjects here. And look, oh, we got more options. What's this? Oh, you can choose even the tracking range and even the parts that you want to prioritize. I'll leave that in auto. Recognition part, eye, head, body, sounds pretty good. Sounds good here. I'm gonna leave most of these autofocus settings as is because I generally shoot a lot of things, especially if this is my like personal camera that I just shoot random subjects with. Yeah, I'm just gonna leave this as is. You can go in here if you find that something is too slow as far as tracking is concerned, or if you want certain parts of the body of the subject to be in focus, you can go ahead and prioritize that. But other than that, I mean, I'm just gonna keep it at their standard. Yeah, all right, back to the menu. Recognition target select, yeah, see, this is all the ones that I wanna leave on. Of course, if there's subjects you really don't want to go ahead and shoot, or if you don't want that in the list of autofocus, you can go ahead and remove that. So if somebody has like a particular good side, like only shoot my right side or only shoot my left side, you can go ahead and prioritize that. Otherwise, you can go ahead and leave it on auto. This would be good for like one-on-ones as far as models are concerned. Subject recognition from display. Yeah, I'm gonna leave that off. Face memory, this is what I was referring to as far as like brides and grooms or whoever you may be shooting for. You can go ahead and add their face there. I don't have any, so we'll leave that off. And of course, the ear, registration face priority. This is where the priority comes in, but again, no subjects, so we're gonna skip that. Going down, auto magnify and manual focus. If you're using vintage lenses, one of the ways to check your focus, because sometimes you can't trust these LCD screens or the viewfinder because of just how much detail it's not too accurate. Okay, you want a big screen. Or you can go ahead and push in digitally to nail your focus. But for me, I prefer not to go that way because it annoys me to have that screen pop up, or at least to have that push in and then just wait for that to go away, or to press a button for it to go away. So I'm actually going to go ahead and turn that off because I like to use peaking, focus peaking. But it's up to you. If that's the way you operate, you can go ahead and leave that on, of course. All right, it'll show you like 1 times 6.1 times 12. Ooh, that's a lot. Yeah, we're gonna leave that off. And especially if you set the magnifying time to no limit, it'll just stay on the screen unless you press certain buttons. Some people leave it on 2, 5. Again, no. If anything, I'll leave it on 2. And the initial focus, if you use it, you can go ahead to set to either one. Again, I don't use it. I'll leave it on 1 times. Autofocus and focus magnified, you could leave that alone. Going down, peaking display. So I'm gonna go ahead and leave that off. We don't have a lens. We don't have a vintage lens to use right now. But when I do, I wanna keep it at mid. So mid, it'll give you some kind of outline like around my body or wherever you're pointing the camera. By displaying how much detail or how much accuracy, you're going to choose one of these options here. So like if you set your peaking level to low, it's actually going to be the smallest like outline around the body, but it'll nail the best focus. If you set it to mid, it'll be like halfway in between. It'll be able to grant you the vision of what's actually in focus, if it's in front of me, if it's behind me, if it's right on me, and still be able to show that with a thicker line. And then high, it'll give you the thickest line to show you what's in focus, but it's not always accurate. So we're gonna go ahead and stick to mid for now. If I was gonna shoot macro, I'd choose low. And if I was outside, perhaps in a more open area, perhaps I would choose high. But let's keep it at mid for now. The peaking color, we're gonna go ahead and I prefer red. Sticks out in the image. And we'll come back to turn this on if we ever shoot or when we shoot manual. Okay, going down. Playback. Whew, we're getting through. It's halfway, like more than halfway. We're getting there. You're a champ. You're a champ. All right, going down. All right, enlarge initial magnification. Yeah, we'll just leave that as is. Initial position again. Yeah, this will be the focus position. So if I'm like going around in the picture and I want to zoom in, I'm gonna go ahead and pick a certain point. Like, oh, did you shoot like my pimple or something? Like, we'll just go ahead and focus position there, right? Well, in that focus position, if we're on the playback mode and we have the little box going around selecting parts of the image, be like, oh, we're gonna highlight this area and then zoom in there. I'm gonna spare you the details and not zoom in on my face. Going down, protect. Yeah, this is more appropriate if you actually have photos, but we don't. Rating, set custom key. Yep, we're gonna leave these on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It'll be good. Some people use their camera rating system to be able to hand off to their camera, to be able to hand off to their model and have them rate the photos that they took and to be able to nail, oh, these are the 5 stars that I personally liked. I don't do that, but some people do. Going down, delete by pressing twice. We're gonna go ahead and set that off. Ironically, if we turn it off, it makes sure that we don't delete our photos accidentally. But if we turn it on, the photos will be deleted right away. All right, we're gonna turn that off. And it's gonna be here, delete to confirm. Yeah, we'll do cancel first. Going down. Okay, none of this stuff because we don't have photos. Again, I like to keep it as JPEGs. Playback speed, if we wanna play this on a big screen or something like that and do a slideshow, we'll just leave that alone. If anything, be 3 seconds. Going down. But you can also do the slideshow here from your camera, I believe. Okay, going down. Display as a group. Sure, we'll leave that on. Display rotation, so if we take a vertical video or took a vertical photo and we go ahead and turn our camera, it'll go ahead and adapt to that. It'll rotate to that. I'll leave that as auto. Focus frame. This shows your focus from your previous shots. I wonder if that works well for video. But anyway, for photos, that's cool. If you want to be like, oh, I nailed that focus on that eyeball. But for now, I'll leave it off because I like to see the overall big picture, almost the final picture or the draft picture before it goes ahead into post-processing. Image jump setting, 1x1 is usually the way I like to go. But that's good that it gives you that option to jump. Smartphone connection, we can do that later. But if you want to know, you want to get ahead, download the Creators app to be able to go ahead and transfer your photos and even control your camera. Also important, if you want to go ahead and have a Bluetooth remote, your phone will be that Bluetooth remote so that you can take photos instead of having to go ahead and press the shutter button or something behind the camera and then run into your spot. PC remote function, and we'll leave that alone. Select on cam and send. This is a shortcut. It's actually this button here that'll, when you have a picture highlighted in the playback button, you can go ahead and press this button and it'll send your photo right away instead of going through other means. But yeah, size of sending image, I like to keep it original. You can send RAWs. Oh, it has not sent RAWs before. Let's do RAW and JPEG just to have that option. But if you plan to just go ahead and do a quick edit, nothing crazy, maybe JPEGs is the way for you to go, but I'm curious to try this RAW and JPEG. Sending target will hit proxies. This is for sending videos from your camera to your phone. And usually this is like regarding the file size. If you want the true file size and the true video, that will take much longer. But if you use proxies and send proxies, it'll take less time, it'll be less space, especially if you're using an iPhone and you don't have that much space on your iPhone because you know, they got that Apple tax. Movie with shot mark. Ah, okay. Cut to 15 seconds. That's good. Cut to 60 seconds. Let's say don't cut. Shot mark is one of those newer features that the Sony cameras have. So when you go ahead and transfer your files from your camera to your phone, it'll come up with those cuts or those shot marks so that when you go ahead and edit those clips, you'll see, oh, this is the best part that I marked in my camera. So I'll cut it later in my phone, or I'll cut it on my phone so that I know what to post to socials. Going back. All right, all this other stuff. Let's turn our Bluetooth setting on later. Remote shoot setting. Oh, this is important if you're going to go ahead and connect your camera. If you choose this option to the destination and the camera, which means the destination would be your phone because it'll shoot your picture and then save it to your phone if you're connected to the Bluetooth. And it'll also connect, or at least it'll save to your camera. So to the SD card and to your phone when connected via Bluetooth. I just keep it as camera only, but it'll be good to shoot to destination if, again, you don't have an SD card, but most of the time I only shoot with an SD card and I bring spare SD cards with me. So camera only, please. Save image size, original. This is more for the phone, but yeah, or iPad perhaps. Okay, going back, going down, USB streaming. This is if we go ahead and plug in our camera to our computer and if we want to use it as webcam. So what kind of image quality or resolution quality that we want to have. 4K is all the rage, but to be honest, HD is enough for me when it comes to streaming. And shooting at 30p is just fine. I don't need it to be at 4K for a webcam. But of course, if you want to be like that, go by all means. Maybe 4K 30 is what I would recommend to you if you were going to go that high. For me, 1080 at 30 frames is good enough for me. Movie record during streaming. I actually like to have a raw video file. So I'm going to go ahead and click enable. Yes, it'll draw more power, but most likely I already have it charging with the battery bank or some other battery solution. Going back, going down, Wi-Fi connect. I don't mess with any of that stuff. It's mostly Bluetooth function. We're going to leave that on, put that on. Pairing. I don't have a spare one right now, so we'll leave that off. But I do have a video about that, and I'll put that in the link down below. Bluetooth remote control on. Ooh, sorry. Okay, we don't have that remote, so later on. Moving down, IP address, more of that stuff. Yeah, leave that alone. Tethering connection. Yeah, we don't have that either. USB LAN connection. Oh, what's with all these options, man? Airplane mode. To save some battery, you can go ahead and turn this on. But again, with airplane mode, you can't connect to your devices, at least wirelessly. I'll leave that on since I don't have a Bluetooth connection with my phone or am controlling with my phone, so I'll leave that off. Everything else here, I also will leave off. Oh, finally, last tap. Finally, last tap. All right, we're here. So a lot of this we already set up. Language, okay, area date. NTSC PAL, this is what I was talking about. If you want 24 frames per second, you can go ahead and do this right here, change it to PAL, but I'm not gonna do that, okay? Going down, gonna save in those settings. I don't have an SD card, so when I'm done doing all this, I haven't loaded in my custom settings yet, so after I load in my custom settings, I'm gonna go ahead and save it onto the card. Going down, custom buttons, this is where all the fun is. Go ahead to the photo settings. We got the photo, video, and playback settings, and then we have more stuff down below. But anyway, custom key, custom dial settings. All right, let's see what this camera's got. All right, so on the rear here, we got this button and this button. So we got white balance. Let's leave that alone for now. Tracking on, I definitely want that already. We're gonna leave that as tracking on, AF on. So this is where I'm talking about the back button autofocus. Instead of half pressing on the button here, instead of half pressing on the shutter, I'm gonna go ahead and full on press this AF button and it'll get that focus on. And so when I'm ready to take the photo, I'm just gonna press the shutter button. That's it. Focus, take the photo. Focus, take the photo. Number 3, touch selection. I'm gonna leave that to something else. We'll leave that to peaking so that we can turn that on. So focus, peaking, select. All right. Going down, focus standard. Okay, I'll leave it at that. Drive mode, that's standard. ISO, also standard. Exposure compensation, also pretty standard. That's already labeled here on the dial, so might as well, right? Movie shooting, it has its own recording button. That's good. Actually, I want to change that. And I'm going to change that to the recall settings. So, where's that again? Here in the shooting mode. So in the shooting menu here and shooting mode, we're going to go ahead and hit camera set memory. And that's what I want to set it to. So when I'm going to go ahead and be in the field and I'm going to go ahead and, oh, I love these settings right here for indoors or for outdoors because, of course, wherever you shoot, whatever time you shoot, it's going to change all the time. So if I'm at a certain venue at a certain time of day and I'm running in and outside, I want to make sure that I got my indoor and my outdoor settings set to go instead of fiddling with the shutter speed, all that stuff. I just want to be able to flip the dial and that's it. As soon as I walk inside, like I don't even have to look at my camera. I can just go flip the dial, walk inside, bam, prime settings. Walk outside, flip the dial again, prime settings. We're good. So that's where I'm gonna keep it at. Focus area here, really gonna be set to wide, but I don't have any other. If anything, this would be a good button to go ahead and set your faces to, register your faces to when you want to prioritize certain people. Now, we'll just leave it as is. Focus hold, if we have a lens here with a certain button here, focus hold it, that'll be good. Okay, here we go. For all this stuff, I'm just gonna leave alone, except for this third one. I like it to be the ISO. Yep, for the front, I like it to be the shutter speed and so, okay. All right. So it depends on your preference. If you're buying the A6700, you probably already have a preference. But for me, I like to keep my aperture in the front dial here at the number 1. And then in the back here, my shutter speed. And the dial, I want to leave it as ISO or ISO. I prefer ISO. You let me know what you like down in the comments. Normally, you would go ahead and hit this tab here to access the ISO. But I actually prefer to use the dial. The only thing is you might accidentally bump it. So you might actually want it off. I like to keep it on. So going back, video settings. Here we go. This is where the most fun comes in. As you see these icons here, it's going to revert to whatever you set your photos to. But for video, I like to have a little bit more control with my custom settings. And I like how on this camera body, you have a little bit more leeway with your buttons. And you have, I think, maybe one more button than what I would normally get, especially from my A6400. So the side button here, I want to change it to white balance. Going over to our shooting menu. All right, it's on the second tab, white balance, and there we go. Set to white balance. For number 2, AF on is not really much of a function for me, but we'll just leave it be just in case it does lose that focus. Otherwise, I would change this to focus magnification, if anything, or you could do that. But for me, I use focus peaking, so that's really not a function that I would use as far as magnification is concerned. Going down, all right here, we're gonna leave that alone. Self timer. I guess this would be good if you want to do a video selfie and just hit record and then walk away. Everything else is pretty much gonna stay the same here. Number 2, we're gonna go ahead and switch it to zoom. First tab here, going down to number 6. I'm gonna go ahead and do zoom. And I want that clear image zoom since this camera has AI, so even if we use clear image zoom, we still retain our autofocus capabilities, the autofocus tracking that which you would normally not have with other A6000 series cameras. So we're gonna leave that as is. Going down, we're gonna leave everything here as is because that's pretty much what they're labeled and I like it where they're at. Movie shooting, I also would like to change that, but actually like, since this button is a little too small for me here, I would rather use the movie mode with the shutter button. So you could use this button, that's fine. But I'm gonna go ahead and change it to what we set for photos. And that's going to be the memory recall in tab 1, shooting mode, and set the memory. So when again, I'm also going to go ahead and shoot video indoors and outdoors, flip a switch because I was able to set my memory quickly. Yeah, we'll just leave that as is. Going down, that'll stay the same. And this will also stay the same. And since I said record video with the shutter button, I also want to put it down here and turn it on. I'm just gonna skip down there and turn it on. All right, playback. You're pretty much gonna keep all these things the same. Oh, it actually gave us less options here. Yeah, all right, fine, we'll leave it as is. If anything, I wanna hit number 2 and I wanna change that to the rating button. Rating, right there, yeah. Going down, the function menu. All right, now we get 2 different sets of function menus. So this is already on top of what we already have. We got on-screen menus, we already have custom buttons, and we have the function menus. So we pretty much want to keep these things optimized for our photography and our videography. And here we have the creative looks. That's something new, at least a little more new, more options. We'll keep that as is. Metering mode, I hardly touch that. Soft skin effect, we definitely got to get rid of that. Change it to something else, maybe flash. Flash mode, wireless flash. Yep, change it. Wireless flash, that's gonna be our second tab. Number 4, there we go, wireless flash. I do have a flash, I don't use it often, but at least it's better than soft skin effect. Shoot mode, we'll leave it there. Although we have a dial. I just don't know what to change to yet. Got white balance, again, I usually leave that on auto. I'm really not gonna touch that, so you gotta find another thing to stick there. I'm gonna set this to peaking level. Third tab on number 4, peaking display. We're gonna change the level. So it's like mid, low, medium, high, or low, mid, high. Touch while focusing, silent mode. Everything else seems pretty good. In regards to video, we have picture profile. Yes, definitely. Auto recording level, definitely wanna see that. Steady shot, if you wanna keep that on, and be able to choose which one we want, whether it's standard, active, which will punch in a little bit. Yeah, we're gonna keep that focus there. Follow that. We don't use this flash for video, so we'll actually change that to something else like display LUT. Display LUT on and off. That's good. Although I would already have that in the main menu. Focus mapping. I don't like to use that. Change that to marker display. Okay, everything else can stay the same. Pretty satisfied with that. Let me just look over this one more time. Some of these things, again, they like double up, so it's almost like redundant. I'm gonna change this to auto framing. I really don't use this function, but if I'm shooting behind the scenes, since this is like my B or C camera, I'm just gonna go ahead and use it. And it'll also double as my vlogging camera. So I'm gonna use auto framing and leave it there in the corner. Over here, the focus zones, focus areas. I'm gonna go ahead and change that. I wanna choose the S&Q frame rate settings. I'm gonna choose select the LUT because I'm gonna put my LUTs on this camera, which is pretty much when I shoot it in a picture profile, I'm gonna go ahead and instead of color correcting and color grading in my software, my video editing software, I just want it to be already burned in like for these videos. So I wanna keep that there. I wanna go back to the photos. So that's what we have there. Select LUT. That's second tab, 5th option here, and select LUT. Zebras will also be good. So I actually wanna put that, where can I put that? For the AF thing here. Choose zebra displays. Zebras are supposed to help with your exposure to make sure that your highlights are not clipping, or at least the way that you set the limits to be. So if they're like 75% too bright or overexposed, then it'll highlight that, so it'll let you know to bring down your exposure just a little bit so that you don't overexpose for whatever picture profile or whatever settings that you have, so that your final product will come out nice and you'll be able to pull down those highlights when you're editing. Okay, I'm satisfied with that. So real quick, okay, creative look, right? Just feel free to pause. Hopefully I'm not going too fast. If you do need to, you can go ahead and slow it down. All right, going back. Different set or settings for stills and movies. And yes, I want to highlight every single one here because I don't want any of this stuff to be mixed together. My shutter speeds are usually different. My apertures are usually different, even though ISOs are usually set to auto. So all of that works a little bit different, and you want things to have more control. You want a particular look. So I'm gonna always choose every single one of these as far as keeping them different. Okay, going down, display settings. Yep, kind of like seeing a little bit of everything. Finder, about the same. Yeah, I would definitely want to leave that off as default because when I look through the viewfinder, I just want to see the image, not all this extra data, especially if it's going to overlap like that. Again, record with shutter, and we'll leave that alone. Custom dials here, yep, leave that alone. Leave that alone. My dial settings, I don't really use this much with my other cameras, so I'm actually going to leave it off this time. AV, yep, I'll leave that. The rotation of the dials, I'm just gonna leave that as is, unless you like yours in reverse. I like to keep mine normal. Dials and wheels, I like to keep those settings locked or unlocked. Leave that as that. Going down. Touch operation, I like using the touch screen, that's fine. Touch panel or pad, that's fine. Panel, shooting screen, yeah, everything here is fine for me. I usually like to shoot with the monitor and I just click on the monitor. Some people like to press on the monitor on the right hand side or the left hand side depending on their dominant hand while using the viewfinder. Especially this thing is flip screen, so you really have options, but I'm just gonna leave most of this here on touchpad settings. Again, see, look, operation area right half, okay? Operation in vertical mode, yeah, it's gonna be the same. Screen reader, this is for accessibility and don't need that. If you need it, you know you need it. Going down to option number 7, selecting the finder and the monitor. So you're between here and down here. We'll leave that on auto. That's for whenever you bring the camera closer to the face and one of these things will like black out like that. Monitor brightness, unless I'm shooting in the sunny weather, I'll keep it on manual. This will also, of course, help with battery life. Okay, viewfinder brightness, I'll leave that on auto. Again, if you need to like calibrate something here, the finder, I'd leave that off. Display quality, it's a small screen, so I'm just gonna leave it on standard. As long as the photo looks in focus, and if I doubt that it's in focus, I'm usually zooming into photos on the playback. Finder frame rate, I don't need it to be high. I'm just gonna keep it on standard. Monitor flip, of course, with the direction, if you want it to flip or if you want it to retain the orientation, you can go ahead and leave that on auto or turn it a certain way. So you have horizontal flip, left and right, 180 degrees. For me, I love it on auto, that's fine. Next, all right, got time code and things like that. I'll leave that as is. Gamma display, I like to turn that on. So when I'm using picture profiles, this is good to be able to preview what you're looking at. Gamma display again, we'll look it on auto. Display LUT, well, this is if you like to shoot just S-Log or whatever profile that you're using that is not already S-Log. But I'm gonna go ahead and turn that off. All right, so now we can use display on. Remaining shot display. Really? It's not displayed? I like to see it. Always display. I want to know how much shots I have left, how much time I have left in my videos. Auto review. This is when the photos will pop up right after you take the photo. I like to have that off because practically when you're using a mirrorless camera, you already see what your final image will turn out to be. So you don't need to go ahead and review every photo right after. Shoot mode select. Select the screen, that's fine, leave it on display. Auto power, the monitor really does not turn off. Didn't know that was a thing. But you can turn it off after our power save at 1 minute. Let's make it like 2 minutes. Power save by the monitor, yeah, we'll keep it the same. Linked auto power off temp, we'll set it to the high. This is especially important for 4K. Yeah, so that you can keep recording longer if you need to. Volume settings, keep it on 7. 4-channel audio monitoring. Yeah, I'm just gonna keep that on 1 and 2. Audio signals, I like to turn this off. This is like referring to if I hit record, it has this little jingle every time I hit record, on and off. Don't like to hear that. Okay, we're getting there, going down. All right, USB connection mode, just ask me. As soon as I plug my USB, just ask me and I'll choose the option. But most of the time I'll be using it for USB streaming rather than any of the other options here. But say you don't have an SD card reader and you just want to plug in your camera, then you could also use mass storage as well. Whatever you prefer. For this setting, we'll leave it at multi. USB powering, definitely. HDMI, if we want to plug this out, send this out, set it to auto, output settings. Yeah, I like the way things are already here. Just leave it as is. Rec control, well, you need to take the time code off. Oh, okay, yeah, sure, I'll let it control. Okay, HDMI info display, we'll turn it on. And for HDMI info display, this will be good for me because I like to show a little bit of behind the scenes what the screen shows when I take photos or videos, and it'll just output my screen info to that external monitor or screen. And then control for HDMI, leave that on. Going down, last screen, woo! Okay, video light. I want to know what my recording is like, so I want to go ahead and set it to power link. Video light, I want to know when I'm recording, so I like that light and I'm going to keep it on. Sensor cleaning, okay, that does its own thing. Auto pixel mapping, this is kind of annoying, but if you like to keep it on, you can go ahead and keep it on. This is really for the focus mapping, so yeah, I'll just turn it off because I don't use it. Pixel mapping again, yeah, no. You can do it manual there. Version, all right, 1.0. Display serial number. That's it, man. I don't think I'm gonna go ahead and add anything to my custom menu because I already like everything that's already on this menu right here. This main menu on this second tab. Right, you can go ahead and choose whatever you like here. Yeah, I really like it. It's already solid. If anything, the only thing left to do is to go ahead and program my custom settings for my video because I haven't done that yet. So yeah, let's do that. We're gonna move our dial here on the side and we're gonna go ahead. Yep, that's video. All right, yeah, you can already see the sound here. And this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna go ahead and I'm going to program my video settings. It's in the menu here. We're gonna choose 24p. And I like to record at 1/50th of a second. Follow that 180-degree rule. And ISO. Since this has a similar sensor to the FX30, the base ISO is actually going to be 800, and that'll give us the most dynamic range. So we'll keep it on that. White balance, we're actually going to not keep it on auto white balance because I'm shooting manually also on video, and I want to be able to dial it in manually. So we'll keep it on that for now. Picture profile, I will turn the picture profile on, and we'll do S-Log. Where are you? Where are you, S-Log? Ooh, the basic LUTs. I don't have any LUTs. It's okay. All right, we'll leave this off, but normally I would go ahead and program a LUT in here. I didn't load it in yet. No SD card. But yeah, we like everything else the way it is here. Okay? All right. So that's generally what we like. Now I'm going to go ahead and press our custom button here on the side, which allows us to save, right? Our custom button here on the right-hand side. So right now we're gonna save our 4K 24 frames per second in slot 1. All right, now we're gonna go back into our menu and we are gonna go to this top here and we're gonna go shoot at 60 frames per second. And we're gonna go ahead and do that for the 180-degree rule again for shutter speed, 1/125 or 1/125th of a second. And again, we're gonna keep everything else the same. File size here, I just wanna keep it here at 45 megabits per second, that's fine. Again, HS, that's good enough for me. Hit our custom button here on the side again and save that in slot 2. And then last but not least, do the same similar thing. We're gonna go back to menu, change this to 120p, 4K 120p, yeah. And we're gonna change that to 240, follow that 180-degree rule, capture enough frames, and again, this is already going to be kept at the lowest setting here at 200 megabits per second, 420 10-bit, and that's good enough. that's it. That is that. I made a mistake here. This should, I like to keep this thing at 12. 12 recording level. So, but anyway, we'll change that later on. Okay, go ahead and press that button. Go to number 3. Cool. All right. Now, if I was gonna fix my settings in the field, like I did with the sound, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna turn this dial here and change it to number 1. Okay, so it's on 1. You can see that it's 24 frames. Number 2, it's already at 4K 60. Number 3, 4K 120. All right, we're gonna go back to 4K 24. And what I wanna do is change the recording level and set that to 12. I'm gonna go ahead and hit that custom button again. And I'm gonna set it here at 1, okay? I just realized my steady shot. I'm gonna hit that to active. I'm gonna go ahead and save it again, custom. See, it's easy, custom buttons are great. All right, now for 4K 60, same thing. Change my settings here in the function menu. Change that to active steady shot and change this to 12. Perfect. All right, and now custom button 2. That's it. A copy of these things are going to be down below in the description, free download. If you want to maximize this camera even more, consider getting accessories for it and contemplate future accessories for it right over here. Thanks again for watching. Now go out there and shoot for the life that matters. See ya.